Welcome to the Popish Plot. My name is Nate.
I'm Jessica.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're here with a much belated, but still worthy of being done, Saints of April.
Listen, the Sede may be vacante, and we may be...
Or, depending on when this gets actually put out, maybe not.
It is at the time we're filming.
Yes.
We're very late.
We're filming in April.
For us, right now.
It is April.
It is still April, and the Sede is vacante.
Even before the Pope passed, we had just a heck of an April, so give us some slack.
Cataclysmic storms, power failures.
All the stuff. All the things. As you said earlier, cats and dogs living together.
Yep.
But we are here, and we are going to talk about April Saints.
So
what was our theme for April Saints?
For April, I went with long names. Now, you might be like, why didn't you do that for May? Because that would be ironic and funny. And I went, no, I have something else
She has something else funny in store for May. So.
She didn't do it. She didn't do long names in May because that would be poignant, and it would also be expected.
It's a surprise.
Surprise! Besides, April is also a pretty short name.
Bombardment!
Say Barbara?
No, that's in December?
Yeah, Barbara's not that long, just, the explosives.
Yes. A lot of these either have last names or they're of places.
Here we go!
Or,
okay.
I think we have at least one of another saint.
Well, I love those.
So, for April 1st, we actually have two. First one is Blessed Anacleto. Oh, that's an L. Sorry. Anacleto Gonzalez Flores. They were born July 13th in 1888, and they died in 1927. They were from Tepatitlan, Jalisco, Mexico. And they were a member of the Catholic Association of Young Mexicans and a catechist.
Ooh.
They wrote articles and books and were a member of the National League for the Defense of Religious Freedom. And given that they died in the 20s in Mexico, surprise, surprise, they were murdered by gunshot.
So the Cristero War and whatnot.
Yes.
Also, on April 1st, no fooling, we've got St. Macarius the Wonder-Worker. Born in Constantinople, initially named Christopher, he was a monk, abbot, and, not surprisingly, miracle worker. He died in exile due to persecution of the iconoclast emperors. Boo! Macarius the Wonder-Worker.
Were the iconoclast emperors being persecuted?
No,
or they were the ones doing the persecution?
They were the ones
persecuted by.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
They hated icons.
So, if an iconoclast emperor, he was persecuting the iconophiles.
Okay.
And all true Orthodox are iconophiles.
As they ought to be.
I do not understand how so many of the iconoclasts came from the East. When the one thing about, what makes the Orthodox not just weird, beardy Catholics is they have the wall of icons.
No. That was the whole thing. Because at the time, their armies were generally in retreat in the face of Islam. So they thought, it must be the wall of icons. Because Islam has very strict prohibitions against depicting anything living. Mm-hmm. So they're like, these guys are winning, so maybe they're rightish? But then you can see why it was so traumatic for the Byzantines.
Yes.
Because they're super iconophiles.
Yes.
April 2nd.
You need a wall of it to separate the sanctuary from the main part.
April 2nd, we got four of them. Hit us up with that first one, Mike.
Saint Nicetius of Lyons. Born 513, died 573, a nice 60-year lifespan. A bishop known for a revival of ecclesiastical chant and an exorcist. Nice.
All right. We also have St. Pedro Calungsod. Born 1654, died 1672. Not a particularly long life there. Mm-hmm. From the Philippines, was martyred in Guam, and was a companion of Blessed Diego Luis de San Vitores.
Yes,
that's a name.
We have no word on if he got a doctorate that's technically totally legal in America before he got murdered.
Mm-hmm. Next, we've got St. Polycarp of Alexandria. Died 303, an Egyptian martyr. And 303 means he died in the Great Diocletian persecution.
Yes.
That's all we've got.
Going back to the
Well, he was from Alexandria in Egypt, most likely.
This is not the Polycarp. This is a different Polycarp.
going
There's
back
so many mini carps.
All the carp.
going back to Blessed Diego Luis de San Vitores.
See,
I gotta say, if Blessed Luis ever gets sainted, that would be like the awesomest, because a saint who has a saint in their name. I don't know, I might just change my name to have a saint name in it, so that way, if and when I become a saint,
You have 3 saint names. Saint so-and-so, Saint so-and-so, Saint so-and-so.
yes.
well, Blessed Dina Bellinger is like, in like religious life, she was like, she's Blessed Maria of Saint Cecilia, so she'd be Saint Maria of Saint Cecilia, if she makes it.
It's one of those things where if you're already known by your original name,
Yeah.
it's less impactful.
I'm not disagreeing. It irks me when people do that, because nobody ever calls Saint Francis anything but Francis.
Just like, St. Edith Stein technically is named after 2 other saints in her religious name.
Saint Teresa Benedicta of the Cross.
And
We plow forward.
And finishing out April 2nd, we have a Ukrainian saint. Saint Volodymyr,
Blessed.
Blessed Volodymyr Pryjma.
They're pretty young to have been, sainted yet.
That's fair. They were born July 17th, 1906, and they died in 1941. They were from Strach. I'm going to slaughter these. I apologize to all the people who know how these places are actually pronounced.
We can issue a blanket apology for all mispronunciations.
Yep.
I mean, it was only
in Western Ukraine. They was a cantor and worked at the village church. Was martyred by the NKVD, or as we know them, the Soviets.
Boo!
I mean, it is one of the problems with the Cold War. I mean, whenever I have to go and post for a friend the Saint Olga of Kiev, I have to make a note that this was before we knew that it was Ukraine and not the Ukraine, and that it was Kiev and not.
We were still pronouncing it Kiev then.
Yes.
Yep.
And in fairness, if you find yourself a saintly person from that part of the world within that time period, odds are
They were killed by the
they were
Soviets.
killed by Soviets.
There's a lot of that going around. April 4th, we've got Saint Gaetano Catanoso. Born on St. Valentine's Day in 1879, died 1963, an Italian priest.
Wow, that's actually a really solid lifespan there.
I mean, he has a very poetic name. He's got O's at the end of everything.
I'm just saying, he lived through both World War One. He's Italian, and he lived through both World War One and World War Two.
Yep. Although helping him, he wasn't really of age to fight in either of them.
Yeah, he was a bit too old.
Yes. Yes, he'd aged out of fighting in the wars before they started.
So you just think of how much happened in Italy between 1879 and 1963.
I mean, it changed countries. I don't know how many times in that time. Because there was a time where I swear every decade it was a new combination of states.
By that point, only would have happened twice. But yeah.
Also on April 4th, we have Saint Zosimas of Palestine.
Zosimas.
Born 460, died 560.
Now that's a life.
Now that's a life there. And was a hermit, thought to be the friend and biographer of Saint Mary of Egypt.
So this is the only god by which we know the story of Saint Mary of Egypt. He's the one who went out into the desert and encountered this wild woman and came back a year later and buried her.
Yes, this wild woman who prior to her saintly life lived a very unsaintly life. Not because it was unsaintly, but because, well...
No.
Wasn't St. Mary the one who did it because it's what she wanted to do?
Yes, we already established she was not a prostitute.
She was a slut,
she
not
was
a
a
whore.
slut.
Right. I'm just saying.
She did it for fun.
She lived an unsaintly...
She had money in her family.
I'm just saying. She lived an unsaintly life, not specifically because it was unsaintly to be that way, but because that was just the way she wanted to live.
Yes, there were a lot of poor women who were desperate, and she's like, nope, this is my fun activity.
She did go on pilgrimage specifically to corrupt the pilgrims.
I mean, we've gotten the
Fair
data
enough.
about whenever there's a fundamental Christian group of men who have a weekend somewhere and
Yep.
how much
Oh.
money they make from porn.
Totally. Well, and especially because, like, well, maybe God was putting her in a position to tempt you jerks to prove just how hypocritical you were. April 5th.
Saint Maria Crescentia Haas.
I love Crescentia as a name.
Yeah,
Especially as every other name's nice and short. I can pronounce
Boom.
the rest of her name.
that is fantastic.
Maria Haas.
I like that one. That's Crescentia is a name that should be brought back.
So tell us more about her.
Born 1682, died 1744, was a member of the Third Order Regular of St. Francis.
On April the
So I'm one of the million Franciscans.
again, Franciscans, they love it.
Yep.
When you have 3 Franciscans, they've found 4 different orders. On April 7th, we've got Blessed Domingo Iturrate Zubero. Born 1901, died 1927, a Trinidadian priest.
Which I'm
Not
surprised.
Tobagoan, Trinidadian.
I'm surprised we don't have more
Sorry,
information.
Trinitarian priest. I misread it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the religious order.
The religious order, not where he's from.
I mean, I
It'd be
did
more
make
fun if you were
this
from Trinidad.
very early in April. Just stuff happened, so I don't have a lot of notes.
And
a
then,
Trinitarian priest.
and then on April 8th, we have Saint Walter of Pontoise. Born 1030, died 1095. Not particularly long, but 65 years ain't nothing. It ain't nothing to,
Especially in the 11th
stick your nose
century.
up at. Is a patron of prisoners, prisoners of war, vintners, and also is a patron against job-related stress. So,
This
if
guy.
you're like me and
you gotta know this
tend to
guy.
get stressed out about your job once in a while, pray to Saint Walter of Pontoise.
Make a friend of St. Walter.
Yeah.
This guy should be more popular.
I'm now imagining the yelling of the name of Walter from like Sleepless in Seattle, but as a prayer.
Walter.
Yeah. Oh, Walter. Yeah, Walter.
No, that's when Harry met Sally.
That's when Harry
Oh,
met
Harry
Sally.
met Sally.
And
they need to make
and
different
the name was
films.
Sheldon. The name was Sheldon, not Walter.
Moving on.
We need to do a rewatch of clearly all their films where they're together,
They're all in there now.
so we can enjoy the ding of You've Got Mail.
No, because it's Meg Ryan, but in Sleepless in Seattle, she's opposite Tom Hanks. In the other one, she's opposite Billy Crystal.
Yes, that really is the issue.
You've got Mail and Sleepless in Seattle are Meg Ryan. And
You've
Tom
got
Hanks.
Mail, Sleepless in Seattle, and there was one other one that are the trifecta of the Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan.
Joe versus the Volcano.
Yes.
So the clearly most superior of the 3 films.
Yeah.
Yes, as is the luggage. I've had a very long day and didn't sleep last night.
No one is judging you. No one is judging you.
Everyone
Just-
judge me. Judge me in the comments. Make comments about how you're judging me. I don't care.
If you're going, while I don't want to stop you from judging my wife in the comments, if you are going to be judging her publicly, please make sure to go and have a conversation with your priest afterwards, because while you may do it in all good humor,
She messed up the
you
Meg
are
Ryan
still
films.
you are still judging a person publicly.
But Jesus has not to do. April 11th. Saint, there's no way I'm going to get this right. Saint Barsanuphius.
I think you got that one.
Close as it's going to get. Died in 550. An Egyptian who was a hermit in Gaza. Was known for communicating only in writing and living without food or water. Holy smokes. If anyone can pronounce his name, he'd be very well known.
I'm gonna need more details. Not right this
Barsanuphius.
second, but I'm gonna need more details on this Barsanuphius who lived without food and water.
I think
It was one of the early times, so he
probably survived only on the Eucharist.
Look,
He didn't invent the vow of silence, but he's totally like, I'm not talking to anyone.
I'm willing to accept
I
that
am a hermit.
I know there's a lot of introverts who are like, ooh, communicate only in writing. I never have to talk to anyone.
I'm gonna say I'm willing to buy that he lived on a very restrictive diet, but
Maybe he was like the monks who were on the beer fast.
I mean,
it's Egypt. He's in Gaza.
No food or water,
And
plenty of booze.
All right, that I could buy. That I could buy. And while we're on April 11th, we also have Saint Stanislaus of Krakow. Born the 26th of July in 1030 and died in 1079, so only 49 years at that time. Known for his preaching, spiritual advice, and as bishop excommunicated the king who then personally murdered him while saying mass.
Which really proves that he should have been excommunicated.
Totally.
That
he
king
even
should
sent
have been
Edgemans.
excommunicated a long time ago, because...
Stanislaus is a huge deal in the Polish American community. I've been to a parish, a Stanislaus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like
if you're
like
gonna,
Thomas Becket, but even more so because the king did it himself.
Yeah. He didn't send his henchmen.
if you're gonna kill a priest during communion services, you really better make sure you have a lot of evidence as to why they were a horrible person, and not simply that, well, they said some really nasty things about me and they wouldn't let me come to church.
I think by the time you're awful enough that you're going to murder a priest during mass, you don't care.
Yeah, like I can't think of any situation
I think
where
he cares now.
Even the worst, priest should be murdered during mass.
No, I take that back. Odds are
arrested after for various crimes. Okay, there's been some bad ones, but
odds are
you don't murder anybody during mass.
I don't know. I don't know
especially
if the
because if you
king
do.
ever went to ever went to confession afterwards.
We hope he did.
We hope he did. He may be regretting it now, or he may very well, very much not be regretting it now.
I mean, what if he killed him in the awkward part where he's said the prayers over the bread but not the wine?
Sure.
So you can't just stop the mass. You can't, be like, okay, mass is done, we distributed communion. You have to get another priest to show up to finish this mass.
I don't know that level of detail. I hope that didn't happen.
I mean, also, during that era, I don't think they had the exact same rules for things like that.
So,
what to do if your priest drops dead of the plague during the middle of mass.
So that is
a helpful pictogram because people couldn't read.
Priests could read.
That is.
But they're dead in this situation.
Those are the saints of the first half of April.
That is the first half of April. Thank you very much for listening. Go down to the comment section below. Maybe you have some saints with really long names that we did not think to add in.
Maybe
who also have feast days in the month of April from the looks of it.
Maybe you have other films that clearly I'm misremembering who's in what.
Now, of course, April is always one of those tricky months because it's usually in Lent, Holy Week, Easter. So there's a lot of they kind of
moving things.
They kind of clear the calendar to a degree because they know a lot of these are never going to be celebrated.
Mm.
But
maybe
still,
in the 1000s, what would you do
Seriously.
officially if your priest was killed in the middle of the mass? Do you have any books of canons from the 1000s?
So after the consecration of the body, but before the consecration of the blood.
Also, if you do happen to have books of canon law from the 11th century, may I please request that you take those to a museum.
Please wear gloves
somewhere.
Or wash your hands thoroughly. There's different ideas on how to handle them properly.
Just make sure they get to some place where they can be protected for posterity.
First, take pictures of every page for us.
Don't use flashes. No flash photography.
And until next time.
Remember to live your faith.
Love your faith.
Share that love.